Hey guys, it's you back with another video. If this is your first time ever seeing my face, please hit the subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications if you want to join the G gang. If not, then hey girl, hey, let's get to the video. I'm so sorry, somebody's mowing their lawn and this is the only time of the day that I had to record today, so sorry guys about the noise in the background. But today we're gonna be watching Binging with Babish, little bits from Rick and Morty. So I'm gonna see, because I'm gonna put out a video tomorrow which is a cooking video, a baking video, you know, so look out for that. So this is just like a little intro to that. So I'm kind of like want to know what this is all about, because I might make it one day.
Is your mouth tiny or small? Then why don't you come down a little bit where the food is tiny? It looks like regular food but really tiny. It's just tiny and fits right in. Fits right in. We got tiny lasagna, tiny pizza, tiny pie, little tiny fried eggs.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to
I like that
Binging with
transition you just
Babish.
did.
This week, we're taking a look at little bits. It's food that's real tiny and small, and oh shit, we got a tiny whisk. Okay, Andy, leave the silly voices to the professionals. This is Tiny Whisk's moment to shine, and he's going to be joined by some tiny friends. First up, tiny lasagna, for which we're going to need some fresh pasta so we can roll it out really super thin. I'm just going to warn you guys that I'm going to make tiny foods out of normal-sized batches, so please don't be mad at me. I figured this is what they would do in the restaurant business anyway, so if anything, I'm being accurate, right? Anyway, back to the actual cooking.
Give me a bowl out of flour. Oh my god, my laptop.
Eggs and a little bit of kosher salt into probably about 14 ounces of all-purpose flour, using a bench scraper and ultimately our hands to bring it all together into a smooth, cohesive ball that we're going to knead until it just comes together. And
so what happens to the rest of the flour?
Bag, wrap it in plastic wrap and let it rest for 5 minutes. Don't waste all that extra flour. We're going to need it later, so just sift it out before retrieving our now nicely relaxed ball of dough, which is now going to be a lot easier to knead for 7 to 8 minutes until super smooth and taut. Now we're going to place it back in the plastic bag and let it rest for 30 minutes. Just enough time to get started on a tiny batch of sauce. Into our smallest saute pan goes about a tablespoon of olive oil, a quarter shallot, and half a clove of garlic grated on our very smallest grater. Mix it around with our tiny spatula before adding about a cup of tomato puree. Mix everybody together, lower the heat, and then we're going to add a little tiny pinch of oregano, a tiny pinch of dried basil, and an extra tiny pinch of crushed red pepper flake. Any more than 1 or 2 flakes and this is going to come out really spicy. Bring this to a bare simmer and let it go for about half an hour until nice and thick and the tomato's acidity has mellowed. Then we're headed back over to the worktop where we're going to start rolling out our pasta. First, we're going to divide the dough into 4 equally sized pieces, set it onto a well-floured surface, and roll it out using the smallest rolling pin you can find, just thin enough that it can pass through the widest setting
what's it called?
Then through said widest setting, we're going to start rolling out the sheet of dough.
What?
I need that. Thirds and rolling it back out and passing it through 2 times in order to laminate the dough and build up the gluten network, which is going to help our pasta turn out a bit more toothsome. Then, 1 notch at a time on the pasta roller, we're going to roll the dough out thinner and thinner until it's as thin as nature will allow, and the ghostly specter of your hand can be seen through it when held up to the light. And now I had to craft a sort of tiny lasagna pan, for which I thought this box of tea would make a good template. I'm using aluminum foil here because it's the best option I have, but take note that you generally don't want to cook lasagna or any tomato-based food in aluminum. It's perfectly safe, but aluminum is what's known as a reactive cookware, and any especially acidic foods like tomatoes cooked for more than 30 minutes can pick up a sort of off metallic taste. But for our purposes today, this little guy is going to work just fine. I'm going to start by laying down a little smear of tomato sauce. This is going to sort of act like a protective glue for our bottom lasagna noodle, which I'm going to cut using this tiny pizza cutter and the tea box as a template, so as the noodles will fit inside our lasagna pan like a noodly glove.
That is so cute.
Spread a little bit more sauce on top of this first noodle, grab my tiny block of low moisture mozzarella out of the freezer, and introduce you to the tiny cheese grater. Somebody gave this to me while I was on my book tour, and it's been waiting in my drawer to make its auspicious debut. So I'm just going to grate a layer of mozzarella in there, followed by a layer of ricotta cheese, applied of course with a tiny spoon. I'm not usually a ricotta in my lasagna kind of guy, I'm more of a bechamel stud, but I want to keep this as classic as possible. And atop the ricotta goes a little grating of Parmesan cheese. And now, since I'm sure you want to see what the hell's going on in here, I've got some amateur iPhone footage of the scene. As you can see, I'm laying a noodle down atop our cheese and sauce, topping that noodle with another tiny spoonful of sauce, and repeating the process for as many layers as the lasagna pan will support. In my case, I got about 4 full layers in there. Then on top goes a little bit more sauce and Parmesan, and this guy is ready for the oven, or rather the toaster oven. And just like any lasagna, we want to bake it covered for the first 30 or so minutes of baking, so as to prevent the top noodle from drying out and the cheese from burning. This guy's headed into a 325-degree Fahrenheit toaster oven for about 25 minutes before we take it out, remove the cover, and take a look to make sure that everybody's holding together. As you can see, we've got a little cheese bubble up, but no big deal. I'm going to grate a little bit more Parmesan cheese on top before returning this guy to a now 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 5-10 minutes until golden brown and bubbly on top. Now, rather foolishly, I did not apply nonstick spray to my lasagna pan before baking, so this guy needs to cool off almost completely before I can even try to get it out in one piece.
Why did it looks like it fell. Like, not fell, but it looks like it got smaller than what it was before.
Sized piece of lasagna to me. Well, remember, this is a whole pan of lasagna and thus contains at least 6 servings. So I'm just going to slice this guy up with a very sharp knife, and let's see if we managed a halfway decent 1-inch tall cross section. Yeah, man, that's tiny lasagna. Let's switch over to the macro lens so we can see all those distinct layers and dig in. I noticed that the patrons of Little Bits were using full-size silverware, so I'm going to do the same. I wanted to eat it in one bite, but that's how you get food stuck in your lips. And I want the food that's tiny and small and just fits right in. And that's what we got here, a tiny member of the Clean Plate Club. But wouldn't you know it, I'm still hungry, so how about we take a crack at tiny pizza? Into the bowl of a stand mixer goes 500 grams of bread flour, 8 grams of kosher salt. Into a measuring cup goes 350 grams of tepid water and 2 grams of yeast. And here comes our old friend Tiny Whisk to whisk them both together. Just whisk them both a little bit, and that's about all for you.
Wait.
Buddy. Rest well, you've earned it.
How'd that water just...
for about 10 minutes at room temperature before adding
what was in the water again?
Salt mixture. Attach dough hooks and mix together for about 2 minutes, and then knead on medium speed for 6 to 8 minutes until the dough is smooth and supple.
Bro, I really want to make this.
Retrieve the dough, which should be pretty sticky, but not too sticky. Enough that we can give it a few cursory kneads.
I know it took him some time to get it off of the thing.
Roll it into a smooth, taut ball, where we're going to let it rise in a covered, oiled bowl for 18 hours, followed by an overnight stay
18 hours?
Process known as cold fermenting. And then hang on to your plumbus, because we're going on a little field trip. To my new house. This is my new home kitchen in Brooklyn. It is not the new Binging with Babish studio that is under construction downstairs in the basement. We're visiting here today because I have a little backyard where we can operate a pizza oven much more safely and much more within the confines of the law. So we are retrieving
2 kitchens in his house?
dough, and normally we would just divide it in half and on an unfloured work surface, stretch it into a taut ball, which we're going to prove at room temperature for 2 to 3 hours. But not when we're making little bits. I'm hanging on to one of these dough balls so I can make pizza for myself for dinner, but the other I'm dividing into smaller and smaller pieces, pressing up through my fingers to form a miniature version of the pizza dough that we're going to proof. I don't really know how well these are going to work in a wood-fired oven, so I'm going to go with a bunch of different sizes here, from relatively small to extremely small, but the procedure is very much the same. We just want it to be a ball with a smooth, evenly stretched surface. Which
I don't know why I'm so weird. I'm looking at his fingers.
More like
they're just so clean, as they should be for cleaning.
We're looking for them to puff up, but not necessarily.
Did you see his friend in the reflection of the bowl?
Proven. Once nice and puffy, we're going to grab our favorite ball, keep the other ones covered so they don't dry out, and give our dough ball a little bath in all-purpose flour before pressing and stretching them out into a pizza. I'm not the most dexterous of dudes, so this proved to be a little bit of a challenge, but eventually I got it out to a little round about 3 inches wide, which I then repeatedly stabbed with a very, very sharp knife, because cold fermented dough is notoriously bubbly, and one errant bubble could turn this into more of a pizza puff than a pizza. So from there, we're topping pretty much like a normal pizza, a spoonful of sauce, some tiny torn morsels of buffalo mozzarella,
what kind of cheese was that?
Pepperoni that I cut out of pepperoni. Then we're getting this onto our pizza peel and bringing it over to a preheated 900-degree Fahrenheit pizza oven, where we're going to let it sit for about 30 seconds before rotating it, letting it cook for a sum total of about 60 seconds, until it's nicely puffed and the cheese is melted.
60
and there
seconds? That looks
charred
good.
dots bespeckling its crust. And there you have it. 60 seconds later, we've got ourselves a tiny pizza. At first, I thought it was too cute to eat,
I want
and
some.
I remembered in the world of Rick and Morty, Nothing is too cute to eat. Well, that is a scary sentence. Well, hey, look at this. We got a tiny cheese stretch. And I gotta tell you, there's something really satisfying about eating a whole slice of pizza in one bite. It makes me feel like a giant, or stony. Anyway, it's time for dessert, so let's pack it up and head back to the lab.
Looks not good.
Where we're gonna make us a tiny apple pie. I wasn't sure what kind of pie that was in the scene, but apple seemed like the best candidate for tinification. Into the bowl of a food processor goes 175 grams of all-purpose flour, about 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar, and a hefty pinch of kosher salt. Just go ahead and pulse those together a few times until they are well combined, and then we are dotting
it just makes me feel like I don't know how to cook.
Thinly
Basically.
Sliced butter. We're then going to pulse this together 15
I just got
to 20
into
times
cooking though,
until
so
the mixture resembles wet sand. Normally we would want to keep
I hope you
pieces
guys are
of
not
butter
disappointed
about
with my
the size of
cooking video
peas in there,
tomorrow.
but because of the small form factor, I don't want too much expansion in this crust. We're transferring the butter flour mixture to a large bowl and sprinkling about 100 milliliters of ice cold water over top. Then we're going to mix this together using a rubber spatula and our hands until it just barely holds its shape, at which point we're going to press it into a disc, wrap it in plastic wrap or throw it in a plastic bag, and fridge for at least 1 hour, ideally up to 4, during which time we can make our apple pie filling. I'm just going to peel, core, and finely mince 1 medium honey crisp apple. That is all we're going to need for this recipe. Cut it into evenly sized pieces that are tiny, and throw them in a bowl with about a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, the zest of about half a lemon, and the juice of about 1/4 of a lemon. Maybe about a 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, maybe about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and very tiny sprinklings of each of the following: ground cloves, ground ginger, and freshly grated nutmeg. Y'all know how I feel about freshly grated nutmeg. Give it a nice little stir with a regular sized spatula if your tiny one is in the dishwasher, and the best way to tell if it's ready is to give it a taste. Does it taste like apple pie filling? Nice. Also, we're going to add about a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. This is going to help thicken the eventual ooey gooey pie filling. Then on a very well-floured surface, we are rolling out our pie dough and readying our baking vessel of choice. The smallest thing I could find was this cupcake tin. So we want to cut out rounds of dough slightly larger than the cupcake cavity. Note to self, new name for ska band, cupcake cavity? Yeah, that's not that good. Anyway, we're then pressing our dough rounds into the cupcake cavity, and you'll notice that mine are a little too small. We want at least a 1/2 inch overhang outside the cavity. I honestly don't know what else to call it. Cupcake hole? Note to self, named for new restaurant, the Cupcake Hole. That's not good either. Anyway, now we're filling our pie shells with the apple filling and cutting slightly smaller rounds of dough that will only cover the overhang, whose edges we're going to brush with a little bit of beaten egg white so as to form a seal. It's kind of hard to make out what I'm doing.
I'm going to try to do this tomorrow, actually. Like, this will look really good.
So as to prevent a pie filling blowout. Note to self, pie filling no, that's nothing. Then I'm just going to crimp the edges decoratively the way that I would a normal-sized pie. And there you have it, some little pies the size of cupcakes. I know that these are a little bit big for little bits, but I tried it with a mini muffin pan and they were too small to cut. Anyway, we are cutting X-shaped vents in the top, brushing them down with egg white, and sprinkling with demerara sugar. Then we're placing these guys in a 325-degree Fahrenheit toaster oven for about 30 minutes. As you can see, my first attempt exploded, but the other 2 survived the journey. And because I forgot to apply nonstick spray to my pan again, I'm going to try to get these guys out and onto a cooling rack as fast as humanly possible. And they made it, where they now need to cool completely. With a normal-sized pie, you'd be
so good. Yeah, I'm going to try to make this tomorrow.
These guys, 45 minutes. Let's bust out the macro lens. And look at that, it still has a nice flaky crust and no soggy bottom. Oh, you would like your tiny pie a la mode? Of course, we have a tiny ice cream scoop at the ready. And unfortunately, trying to eat this pie normal style with a fork kind of ruins it, but that's the price you pay when you're living in a universe where your mouth is tiny and small. And I gotta say, it's a pretty good apple pie. Well spiced, nice flaky crust.
The poor apple pie's on the side like dead.
So there you have it, folks. A fitting way to celebrate the return of Rick and Morty. Some little bits. I'm sorry I skipped the tiny fried eggs. I was going to use quail eggs, but those are surprisingly hard to find during a pandemic. But I did eat a whole pizza, a plate of lasagna, and a slice of apple pie. It was a miniature mukbang.
That was really good. Oh my god. I'm not really surprised because Babish always has like some really good recipes, and I'm actually gonna try out a few. Like, I've watched one of his other videos, but I think I'm gonna try to make the apple pies either tomorrow or next week and try to film it, because I already did like a cooking video for tomorrow, but maybe I'll do it next week and I'll film it. I'll try. But everything that I usually cook at my house usually has to be like sugar-free or whole wheat, so it's gonna be like most likely a sugar-free apple pie. So we're gonna try it. me and my family will try it. And usually the reason why it's usually sugar-free or whole wheat is because my family is mainly diabetic. Like everybody in my household is diabetic except for me, so I always have to try to cater to cooking for everybody. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed me watching this. I enjoyed watching it. It was actually really fun. I really wanted to sit down and not watch it and say anything because I really wanted to listen to what he was using, but it's a reaction, so I had to say something. So I said a few things. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.